Good morning, everyone. All right, we might make a start. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Fraser Coast Council's third meeting for 2019. I want to commence by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet, the Butchulla people, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present, noting their continuing connection to our country, the Butchulla country, and the connection between their laws, history, and culture, and the country we're meeting on today. We'll open with an opening prayer from Reverend Luke Smallwood of the Harvey Bay Uniting Church. Good morning, Luke.
Good morning. It's wonderful to be able to share with you here. Let's take a minute to pray for this meeting to be a blessed one. Lord, we thank you for the privilege that it is to serve. And Lord, I just pray that your blessing would be upon this time. We pray for wisdom, for discernment, and for guidance. And Lord, we pray that this time together would bear much fruit. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, a procedural matter. I seek that the standing orders be suspended for a condolence motion in relation to Christchurch, New Zealand. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I seek to move a condolence motion for the tragic events that occurred in New Zealand on 15 March 2019. 50 people were murdered and dozens more were injured in attacks on two mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand. A lone gunman entered the Al Noor Mosque in the Linwood Islamic Centre and committed this unforgivable act. Many of the victims had moved to New Zealand to study or work and to build a better life for themselves and their families. Some were refugees who thought that they had found safety. There are 50 people who should be able to write their own story for the rest of their lives and live in peace. People like Musad, a 3-year-old child, the youngest victim identified. He was visiting the mosque with his brother and their father, both of whom survived the attack. His brother said that Musad was energetic, playful, and liked to smile and laugh a lot. People like Ramiz Vora, who was killed with his father, Asif, at the Al Noor attack. He moved to New Zealand from India about 7 years ago. He'd just become a father for the first time and his parents had travelled to New Zealand to see their new granddaughter. One that hits close to home for me because I also have a 14-year-old who loves football. I do apologise. Sayad. Sayad Milne was described by his father as an inspiration. He said his son was a talented goalkeeper at Christchurch Casimir High School and dreamed of being an international footballer. His mother managed to escape the mosque to contemplate that there is a young football team in Christchurch that will run out in the field without their goalkeeper, their teammate and friend. This is a pain that should never be or have ever been realised by these young minds who would have been so full of life. These stories will never be told. They have been stolen. Today I call on our community leaders, our elected body, to remember those who have lost their lives and those who have been left behind in grief and sorrow, that we acknowledge the pain of their nation of whom we hold a strong bond, that we rise today free from politics, free from blaming anyone other than the evil that perpetrated this crime, free from fear, that we rise in condolence for those whose stories have been cut short and those that grieve for their loss. Kiha has been invited to the chamber today. He's a Maori elder who spent many years in Christchurch. He has a love for New Zealand and a love for Australia. And as we rise, Mr Mayor, I seek that Kia offers a prayer of condolence. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I'll second the motion. I'm not sure any of us can improve upon what Stuart said by adding anything, but I'll offer it if anybody wants to add anything. Then I'd ask that we rise and Kia addresses us. I seconded it.
Ka tangita ka tangi o kia hau ki he Māori mate. Ka hiria hau ki te atua. E ihi karaiti pātai hau ki a koe ki te mena ki te ngā whānau pane. Ngā whānau no Aotearoa. Hoa atu ki a rātou te kaha mo te hikoe o te ora. Pātai mātou I roto I tēnei ruma, mō tō manaakitanga ki a rātou. Hiki te a rātou wairua, hiki te a rātou aroha. Pātai anō mō I nei manaakitanga I roto I te ingo te matua, te tama me te wairua tapu. Āmene.
Mr Mayor, I seek the standing orders be resumed.
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. I have a disclosure of interest in relation to the confidential item 15.2, and the details are as follows. I'm declaring a perceived conflict of interest on the basis of a relationship with one of the parties referred to in that item. One of the parties has submitted an expression of interest which is under discussion. Now, as a consultant to a local legal firm, I provided some legal services for the benefit of that party. The matter was unrelated to the council. It was unrelated to the subject of the expressions of interest, and the services were provided some time ago, roughly in the period April 2017 to April 2018. I don't believe that that relationship would prohibit me from complying with my obligations. Nonetheless, I've taken advice from the Integrity Commissioner, and she is of opinion that I should withdraw from the meeting in this particular instance. That's not an opinion I share, but nonetheless, I'm prepared to comply with that on this occasion. I should raise one other point in relation to this item. Section 175E2 requires me to name the party with whom I have a relationship. However, other provisions of the legislation and code of conduct require me to maintain confidentiality of council business, and I can't comply with both at the same time, in that disclosure of the name of the party would breach council's confidentiality. And so therefore, and in accordance with the first part of this is in accordance with the Integrity Commissioner's advice, that I simply advise that the party is one of the parties who submitted an expression of interest. I can go further than that, I believe, once we get into confidential and advise the council itself confidentially the name of that party, and I think that would comply with the obligations. The legislation's in conflict. It doesn't provide any clear way around it, but that seems to me to be consistent with the advice I've received from the Integrity Commissioner. I'll also raise a second perceived conflict of interest in relation to the same item, Mr Mayor, if I can, just for completeness. This is a perceived conflict which I raised on an earlier occasion, the substance of which is that my wife Susan Ann Lewis and my family trust, the Lewis Family Trust, holds shares in a company called Lakeside Law Proprietary Limited, which owns a commercial unit at 6 Leotzi Street, Pialba, which is on the very edge of the Pialba CBD precinct in accordance with the master plan. I don't believe that interest is of any sufficient relevance to require me to abstain from participating in the debate on that issue, and indeed when this was raised on an earlier occasion, that was the view of council as well. However, since today I'm vacating the room for other reasons, I'll vacate the room for this reason as well. Thank you.
As there's no, as Councillor Lewis is leaving, there's no need for a motion, is there? Yeah. Are there any further declarations of interest?
Yes,
Councillor
Mr
Lake.
Mayor. The same number as Councillor Lewis on 15.2. It's a perceived conflict of interest, and I know that it certainly would be out of the boundaries, but I do want to declare that any move to this type of a venture and moving council buildings around with my ownership of Torquay Post Office, even though it's nowhere near that area, could also possibly have some type of impact. But I believe I can stay in the room, and it's only a perceived conflict of interest.
I don't think he's a perceived interest in that. He's saying it's I don't know. I move that the Councillor Light does not have either a real or perceived conflict of interest in the matter and is accordingly free to participate in the meeting while agenda item 15. Item 5.1, confirmation of minutes of meeting, and that's page 4. Is there a mover that they be accepted as true and correct? Councillor O'Keefe, seconded Councillor Hanson. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. The next item is a report on public participation.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We had 5 people that participated in public participation this morning. The first representation was from Ms Sotique Sanderson and Davina Ebenezer. They spoke to the council and provided an outline of Bayside transformations and sought sponsorship to assist funding their activities. The second presenter was Mr Barry Bundy, who spoke on parking and traffic issues on Bay Drive, Aroween, and expressed his appreciation to council for recent works that have been done to address that concern. Third speaker was Mr Graham Wode, who provided a continued update of 3 flooding issues and believed that they had not been adequately addressed by council. Fourth speaker, Mr Mayor, was Jacine Leslie, who provided information on the proposed Harvey Bay Hospice that recently received funding from the federal government. And the final speaker, Mr Mayor, was Charles Mayer, who raised concern in relation to no undercover access to the Harvey Bay Hospital, and also raised his concerns about traffic safety or pedestrian safety in the vicinity of Madigan's Crosswalk.
Okay, we'll need a motion that the council note the verbal report provided by the CEO on the matters raised during public participation. Move to Councillor Chapman.
I'm happy to either move or second if you've already, but I just think it's important that if we are voting on this, it should probably be noted for transparency that one of the speakers was a relation to Councillor Sanderson, because in fact he is voting on it, but it's not a matter in my mind that would require a conflict. So I just think it should be raised and addressed before we vote on it. So are you happy that there's no that he's entitled to vote on the matter.
I'll move that there's no conflict. Is that right? Yeah. I'll move that Councillor Sanderson does not have either a real or perceived conflict of interest in the matter and is accordingly free to participate in the meeting while agenda item, what is this, 5 point? Agenda item 6.1 is discussed, including by voting on the matter. Yeah, seconded, all in favor? Yeah.
Before you go, Mr. Mayor, I'm actually, they spoke about hospice today, hospice, and I'm actually a member of the hospice committee, but.
Yeah,
I
so
feel
don't
that-
vote on this, and I'll do your one next. Yeah. Seconded, Councillor Taylor. I'll put the motion, all in favour? All opposed? That's carried 9-0. I move that Councillor Chapman does not have either a real or perceived conflict of interest in the matter and is accordingly free to participate in the matter while agenda item 6.1 is discussed, including by voting on the matter. Seconded, Councillor Taylor. All in favour? All opposed? You didn't vote. That's carried again, 9-0. Okay, so we'll go back to the original motion. It was moved by Councillor Chapman, seconded by Councillor Everard. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Yeah, getting all the different scenarios. All right, item 8.1, receipt of petitions. Are there any petitions to be tabled? No. Move to item 8.2, Riverheads Car Park, page 17.
I'm happy to move this one.
Councillor
Mr. Mayor.
Everard is moving that the
Petition be-
petition is received and the chief petitioner be advised of the information detailed in the report. Councillor Chapman seconding. Is there any discussion?
No,
No?
no comment from me.
Okay. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. The next item is item 9.1, minutes of a Heritage Advisory Committee for February 2019, page 20. Did you want to move this, Councillor Lewis? Yeah. Is there a seconder? Councillor Maddern, did you wish to speak to it?
I will briefly. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The Heritage Advisory Committee is a formal committee set up by the council, and as you'll see from the minutes of the meeting, it lists at least those parties, members of the committee who were there last time. And I want to place on record my appreciation to those voluntary members of the community. There's a terrific amount of knowledge within that particular committee, and they provide a lot of assistance to the council through this committee. And so I do want to express my appreciation for them. The other matter which you'll see mentioned in the minutes is that the committee at the last meeting discussed a draft report on initiatives which the council could take to assist owners of heritage listed properties and to I guess guide council in how we can better deal with heritage generally. That report is due to come to council within a month or two. I'm not going to go into details of what we discussed, but there are some particularly interesting and innovative ideas in the draft which we discussed, and I look forward to seeing that being brought forward. One of those interesting and innovative ideas was the possibility of a heritage levy, which is mentioned on page 22 of the agenda, and I trust that council can do some serious work on that over the course of the next coming months, so that even if it's perhaps difficult to fit it into the 2019-20 budget, it may well get a spot on the park as opposed to the reserves bench in the 2021 budget. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Maddern, any further speakers? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. The next item is item 9.2, Wide Bay Water and Waste Services Advisory Committee meeting minutes.
Mayor, I'm
Councillor
happy to move the...
Maddern, seconded Councillor Everard. Do you wish to speak to it? No? No? Any speakers? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? It's carried unanimously. Item 10.1.1, the open resolutions register is on page 32. Yeah, Councillor Truscott is moving that report be received and noted. Seconded, Councillor Mattern. Did you wish to speak to it? Were there any questions?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Happy to accept that, and just to thank the staff for adding that one that I raised in the previous meeting about the RV situation, which is being addressed. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Lewis.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to bring councillors up to date on matters which I raised at a briefing recently in relation to the resolution on page 39 from 14 June 2017, which is headed Koala Habitats and Corridors. As councillors will recall, I pointed out that tabulation of the resolution doesn't quite encapsulate the totality of what was dealt with on that occasion. And very briefly, the original motion, the second limb of it says that Council recognises that planning will be necessary for the preservation of significant tracts of land for environmental purposes, particularly in the Hervey Bay area as the urban footprint expands. And the background notes included, and I raise this because this predates quite a number of staff members who were now involved in carrying these matters forward, and it's, I guess, to assist everybody to get the context. The background included the following few lines. Further, it is noted that the population of the region, and particularly Hervey Bay, is likely to increase significantly over the medium and longer term. This will mean greater spread of the urban footprint. It is essential that the planning for this expansion include allowance for significant areas of land where vegetation can be preserved or regenerated, both to avoid pressure on fauna and flora and to provide environmentally appropriate recreational facilities for an expanding population. Now, I'm happy to report that since this was raised a few days ago, I've had some discussions with Director Jared Carline, and we've noted that this is only one of quite a number of resolutions that Council has passed over the last couple of years concerning street trees and so on. And so moves are afoot for us to try to bring all of that together and develop, I guess, a plan, a roadmap, so that we can work out how we're going to go forward with those various issues. And I must just want to put my appreciation on the record for that initiative. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Chapman.
Yes, Mr Mayor, talking about that koala habitat corridor, over the last month, I think there's been a couple of koalas killed between Bingham Road and Riverheads Road. Now, I did raise this earlier with saying that we should be thinking about a koala corridor fence along that area and write a letter to the state government. Mm-hmm. So I'll talk to the directors later about that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Chairman. Just in relation to on page 56, just seeking an update on the situation in Burrum Town, probably through Director Parsons.
Let me just find that item, Mr Mayor. Yes, through you, Mr Mayor. Our property staff have met with the internal stakeholders in regard to providing some scope for engaging a consultancy to look at the options for the development of that Burrum town. So we're looking to provide a defined scope of works, and we are doing that internal consultation. So the expectation is that that will be released to a consultant over the next couple of weeks, and we expect that we should be able to have a report back by May. You know, subject to the consultants being able to respond in that time, but once we've, I guess, engaged with them, we'll be able to provide further advice as to the timing of that report.
Yep. Any further questions or speakers? No, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. The next item is item 10.1.2, Councillor's request for leave of absence on page 65. Is there a mover for this? Yeah, Councillor Hanson. Seconded Councillor Truscott. Speakers, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. We'll get... Yeah. Might as well deal with them all in will it be easier for you, Marlene, if we deal with if we deal them in order, or deal with them now?
Do them now.
Or deal with them now, okay.
Separate motion.
Yeah, okay, we'll go to item 16.1.1, which is a supplementary item. This is, again, a leave of absence for the 1st of April to 15th of April and 13th of May to 31st of May. Is there a mover? Councillor Madden, seconded Councillor Lewis. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. The next one, leave of absence for me. Is there a mover for this? Yes. Councillor Madden, seconded by Councillor Truscott. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. It's for my birthday. Yeah, 40th. The next one is 10.2.2, Organizational Performance Report, February 2019, on page 76. Yes. Councillor Madden's moving it. Councillor Everard seconding. Are there any speakers or questions? No? No. I'll put the motion then. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 10.2.3, Councillor Attendance Policy on page 91.
There's a new document that's coming up.
Mm-hmm. Could you maybe talk us through the change to what's in the agenda?
Yeah, might get Keith to do that, if that's all right, Mr Mayor.
Yeah.
With respect to the amended policy that was circulated after discussion at the briefing session on Monday, item... just need to find... On page 94 of our agenda, of the draft policy, the second sentence or the second paragraph there, a conflict of meeting times is not considered to be an exceptional circumstance. That sentence has been deleted from the updated policy. It was noted at the briefing on Monday that there would be occasions where there is other official business of council that councillors may it may be necessary for them to participate in, and that particular clause may in fact cause a conflict that was difficult to resolve. The other changes with respect to the definitions on page 95 of our agenda, we have removed those definitions and referred to the ordinary meaning of the words within the policy, rather than try to be
they're very self-explanatory
and to confuse the matter. And they are the substantive changes to the policy, Mr Mayor.
Yep, okay.
So I think just for the completeness of the minutes, because I will table the policy as amended.
Yep.
And so we move that the policy as amended and tabled by the CEO.
Can you table it?
Not that you can table it.
Yeah.
If you want. I can table it.
And will, yeah.
Mr Mayor, I wish to table the amended council policy document to be read in conjunction with the officer's recommendation, noting that that supersedes what is in the original agenda. Mr CEO, have I covered off properly?
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll need, do you want to move that tabled?
I move that the amended policy as set out by Director Parsons be tabled and form part of the agenda for the...
And the officer's recommendation.
Oh, well, we can do it. We can do it in one motion. I was doing it as a separate motion, but yes, I'll do it in one.
Can you just make sure Marlene's got all that?
Yeah, I'll just say as tabled by Councillor Mann.
Because the motion's got to be as...
Or she can just table it. Don't need a motion, that can be tabled.
I I'm happy to do either one or both, but I was
We can all
originally just
table Heather's
tabling.
documents.
Well, she's tabling the document.
Yeah.
Councillor Madden.
Okay.
It's still the same document number.
Yeah. Hang on a second. Just a second.
I don't think there's a procedural motion that would be, the document be tabled, there's a procedural motion.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So that's what I'm saying. The motion, we can either, Anne was going to, Councillor Madden was going to do one motion tabling it and then motion accepting it. I was suggesting we just combine them, but either way.
It's up to you, Mr Chair.
Okay, Councillor Madden has,
Separate motions,
yeah.
because it's easier for-
Yeah.
It's easier for.
okay, so that's,
The procedural motion is,
yeah. We just need a.
Sorry.
A
Molly,
procedural motion.
yeah, so that's,
You just add it into the original motion.
yeah, look, add it into, whatever's easiest.
we're going in
I don't
circles.
mind.
Yeah.
Procedural motion, just
Yeah,
amend the motion to table the document.
Yeah, that we're tabling it at the same time as accepting it.
I think that's
Okay.
fine.
Happy to
The
do
councillor
It's actually
Dots,
better than a procedural motion because it's got a seconder
Yeah.
and.
okay. I think that covers it off, as tabled, probably.
Yeah.
Okay, and councillor Everard seconding that. I'll put the motion, all in favour? Any opposed? And that's carried unanimously. The next item is item 10.2.4, amended meeting procedures and standing orders for council meetings and standing committees. That's page 96. Is there a mover of the recommendation on page 96?
There was a deletion in this, yeah, that's in the email this morning. Yeah, paragraph 2, section. It's in the email, but it's not in the meeting.
Keith, can you talk to that? If the mayor requests.
Just a further point of order, Mr
Oh,
Mayor.
yeah, councillor Lewis?
Do we need to move that this matter be taken from the table? The notes say that there was a procedural motion that it lie on the table, so
Okay, yeah.
I would so move that the
Yeah,
matter be taken from the
Councillor
table.
Lewis is moving that the matter be taken off the table. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried. Yeah. Keith?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Again, further to the discussion around the updated meeting procedures and standing orders at the briefing session on Monday, a change was requested to remove some ambiguity in section 2 of the document on page 103, in particular the second paragraph of section 2. There was again an email circulated this morning with an updated document, and if one of the councillors would care to table that document, and I'll read for you the amended second paragraph in section 2 there.
Yep.
After the completion of the investigation, the council must decide in a council meeting whether the councillor has engaged in inappropriate conduct, unless it has delegated responsibility for this decision under section 257 of the Local Government Act.
Yep. Okay, councillor Everard is indicating he wishes to move the amended version with that slight amended version, which is consistent with the legislation, be tabled. I'll put that. All in favour? Any opposed? That's tabled. So now, do we have a mover for the recommendation slightly changed? The council adopt the tabled amended meeting procedure. Councillor Chapman, seconded Councillor Truscott. Are there any speakers? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried. And now I'm using this for the rest of the meeting. So we're switching over to this one now. Okay. Item 10.3, Community Engagement Policy, page 118.
Mayor, I
Yep.
would like to move the office to
Is there a seconder for this? Councillor Chapman? Yeah. Councillor Mattern?
Yes, I would just like to quickly speak to it. This community consultation has been one of my, I guess it's been on my bucket list for council. It was one of the issues I came into council because I felt the communication between the council and the community was a bit one-sided and not as open and transparent as it should be. And I'm really, really grateful for the amount of work that council officers have put into the communication process around a whole series of things, including rates. So I'm delighted to be able to move that we have a formal process now that's underpinned by a consultant's report. For the sake of Councillor Lewis, on page 135, there is a note that we should be ensuring that we use simple language, avoid acronyms or jargon, and I have a real issue with acronyms. So just pointing that out, Councillor Lewis, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. I appreciate all the work that's been done for this particular report.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman has seconded. Did you wish to speak to this?
Yes, Mr Mayor. I'd like to just add to what Councillor Madden's said there, that it's great that we've got a policy now that when we're dealing with the community, it gives the community an understanding of the guidelines, and also it gives the officers an understanding on the guidelines, how we communicate. And so what we're really trying to achieve here is to build a better place for everyone, and this is a good way of having a policy so we can communicate. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Lewis?
Just a note to Mr Mayor that it's great to see that we have a 30-page document or whatever it is to teach us to use simple language. Yep. But anything, I think anything that allows us to eschew obfuscation is a great thing.
Thank you. Thanks. Any further speakers? Not. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. The next item is item 10.3.2, amendment to flood hazard area resolution and planning scheme flood hazard overlay mapping. That's page 137. Is there a mover for the recommendation on page 138? Councillor Everard, seconded Councillor Taylor. Did you wish to speak to this?
I guess, councillors, I think the important thing to take out of this study is based on a Q100 event. In my lifetime in Harvey Bay, which is 20 on the Fraser Coast, which is 20 years, there hasn't been a Q100 event. So, a step forward, the council has undertaken this modelling so our community can be, if there is a Q100 event.
Yep. Wish to speak to us first?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In where the potential for getting things wrong is significant, we rely on experts and their modelling processes. I'm not an expert in this matter, but I fundamentally rely on experts from this council to provide me with the right advice, and that we have those people within our council. Throughout the history of councils where the polity gets in the way of the to progress matters, and we sometimes make wrong decisions rather than what the community needs to hear. This flood mapping is an important part of what we need to do as council to make, and I applaud the staff for the work they've done and to this.
Thank you. Councillor Madden?
Yes, Mr Mayor. In this flood mapping is Glenwood. Right back at the beginning of this term in council, I had Glenwood people, and they were particularly flooding. So this comes out of those. More or less road tested with the Glenwood community. They're very excited. They've been waiting for this information because there was no record of flooding. A couple of things I'd point out. Each landholder who is going to be impacted in one way or another by this flood mapping will receive a letter from council which will clearly set out what the implications are. So we'll give them all the details about if they're impacted by flooding, how they're impacted, etc. So, and there's also a process for community, a Q&A page. So our staff have worked really, really hard to provide communication levels. And I think the last thing I'd like to point out is nothing has changed. Even though there's this flood mapping, it is hypothetical, it's to give us the tools we need, but effectively nothing has changed. So we're not changing where the flood's going to be. That happens from the rain that comes from above. So what it does do very often is give people tools to go back to their insurance company and say, this is the detailed and scientific evidence. I'm asking you to factor that into your premiums that you quote for me. So I'm congratulations to staff. I think it was Kylie who was telling us that to do one full model on the Glenwood modelling took the computer a whole week. So that's the amount of detail that's involved. It's massive.
Yeah.
So thank you. It's very well done.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. The next item is 10.3.3, Concept Plan and Business Plan for the Tanana Recreation Reserve. That's page 148.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move the officer's recommendation.
Yeah. Councillor Madden, is there a seconder? Councillor O'Keefe, did you wish to speak to it?
Yes, I do, Mr Mayor. I've got three in a row that are really close to my heart. This is one where, again, the community came to me early in the term of this council. There are a number of groups that use that facility, a number of leases over it, and my understanding from prior history, it was very difficult to get some kind of view as to what we might do with that in the future and what might be needed because you had so many different parties. So the process was, when they came to me, was to actually move this whole process forward. It's taken a significant amount of time. There's been some changes and iterations in the planning and the process, but I think it's really, I'm really pleased that we've got some kind of a background plan for the future, which now allows those community groups to seek further funding. It also gives us as council, I believe, an opportunity, if there is state government funding for matters like this, that we can actually put forward a case because the background work has been done to develop up the case. So thank you again to all of the staff who have been involved in this process, and I'm very supportive of this plan. Thank you.
Were there any further speakers? Councillor O'Keefe has seconded it. Yep. If there are no, did you wish to speak to it? If there are no further speakers, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. The next item is item 10.3.4, the Mary to Bay Rail Feasibility Study on page 223. The recommendation is page 224. Is there a mover for that? Councillor Lewis, seconded by Councillor O'Keefe. Did you wish to speak to this?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I will speak just briefly. I'm delighted that we've got this feasibility study underway and well underway. The bicycle users group and other bicycle users throughout the region have been working on this project for a very long time. I've seen reports, I think, going back to 2008, and it may well be that they've been working on it from earlier than that, and they've put a lot of effort into it. I think it's a great opportunity for us to create, to develop a really significant piece of community infrastructure, both for the local community and as part of our tourism infrastructure. And I know it has a lot of support. In fact, if you read the report, I think the consultants have advised that in terms of the one-to-one, the people who came to their consultation sessions, there was 100% support for it, and the online responses produced a level of something like 95 or 97% support, which they say is unprecedented. So it is a project which has a lot of support in the community and in turn will provide great rewards for the community. A lot of work to be done yet, but this is a terrific start in terms of getting our planning in place so that we can proceed with it as funding becomes available.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, as Councillor Lewis stated, the concept is well supported by the community, and the benefits to Maryborough and Hervey Bay will be massive. When you look at it on a map, I kind of liken it to being another highway link between the two cities, and there's massive potential here, and I commend the council for their efforts on this.
Another one of mine, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, this again is one of the, I think one of the exciting things about developing up this strategy has been the communication with the community. So a full process put out there to communicate with a lot of responses. What is it, 1,900 responses, which is, in terms of consultation, is absolutely massive. And I'm very grateful to the community who all determined that they wanted to have an input into this strategy. There have been some changes as a result of the state government's legislation for a waste levy, so we've had to factor that into this strategy. We've also had to factor into the strategies some fairly significant changes in the waste industry that are currently happening and will happen in the near future. So to allow the flexibility for council to deal with those changes as they come through. So thank you again to the staff for the work that they've put into this, and to our community for their consultation back to us. It's very important.
Thanks. Yes, and I just want to thank the staff and the Director Mark Vanner, your team, what you've done here. But I also really want to thank Councillor Mattern. I'm not sure if you had an interest in waste and water before being on council, but it's been really good for us professionally to see you develop into this role, to be able to talk about all kinds of biosolids and whatever else, and in a way, it's been really PFAS, yeah. I think it's really credible that you've taken on such an interest in this particular aspect of the council, perhaps the most essential service the council does. That when you turn on the water, clean water comes in and it gets rid of the water you want to get rid of. So it's been really good that we have you on the council working with the team so well. Bring it. Yeah, thanks. If there's no further speakers, I'll put the motion.
Look, councillors, this is a great initiative from our ROC, which is our neighbouring council. So we have the same code, construction code, spread across the region. So hopefully going forward, it will make a little bit easier for our plumbers. And again, a thank you to the staff who have been involved in this one. It's good to see that the other councillors are going to come up to the Fraser Coast level. How's that, Director Vanner?
Any further speakers? No? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 10.5.3, Waste Levy Impact on Commercial Rating, page 456. Councillor Madden's moving this.
I will move it.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Chapman, this does need some explanation.
And hopefully I might have the explanation. So the explanation for this is that the state government has imposed a legislated waste levy to be effective from the 1st of July. And it is imposed on all waste that goes to landfill. There's a caveat there, though, that waste from householders is... the state government is going to reimburse us in advance, if that makes sense, for the household waste that goes to landfill. But any other waste to landfill, and that's a lot of our commercial providers, will have to pay the levy, because we have to collect that levy and pass it back to the state government. In this particular case, and this particular report is around the additional charge that there will be on those commercial users for whom we collect the waste, and that will go to landfill, and it sets out the additional charges there. I'd point out that there are a lot of other commercial providers out there also collecting the waste. When that comes to landfill, that will be also, the levy will be collected from them as they bring it into landfill. So there will be others who won't be impacted by this particular set of charges, but will be impacted by those of their commercial provider. One of the things I probably would like to say about this is those commercial people who have to pay these charges need to think very clearly about what their waste stream is and how they can manage it, because there is a capacity for them if they manage their waste streams appropriately, they may be able to reduce these levies, and that's by making sure as much stuff as they possibly can goes to recycling. I'd also say if you have some questions, I'm sure our staff would be more than happy to assist in those areas, and for those that use another commercial provider, maybe you need to go and talk to your commercial provider to see how they might be able to change their work practices in order to reduce the amount of waste that goes to landfill, and obviously reduce the impact of the levy on their business. So it's something we have to do, we have no choice, but hopefully it will result in significantly less amounts of waste to landfill, because if it doesn't, we have to provide another landfill site, and that's an expensive exercise.
Mr Mayor, just one thing. I know a part of the recommendation is that the inclusion of the beach volleyball courts be considered as part of the Harvey Bay Foreshore Deliberative Democracy Project, and the report itself does refer to the possibility of siting those courts along the foreshore at Point Vernon, which is in Division 6, are therefore of particular interest to me. Now, I don't know that it's generally known throughout the community that the current consultation relates to that part of the foreshore, or relates to a proposal for potentially this kind of development. I'm not saying that we shouldn't include it. I'm not seeking to amend the resolution, but I think it's important that we publicise as much as we can that the deliberative democracy project will want feedback on that proposal, because certainly I was at the workshop on or the consultation last Saturday, and the bulk of the discussion there, perhaps because it was conducted in Torquay, was about Torquay. I doubt very many people were conscious of the fact that they ought to be talking about proposals along the Esplanade of Point Vernon as well, in particular a proposal such as this. So I think that can be cured, but I think we need to cure it by plenty of publicity so that we do get responses in relation to that specific proposal.
Councillor Eppard, did you? No? All right. Any further speakers? Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, Mr Mayor and councillors, I just look at, if we're going to build infrastructure, like look into building infrastructure such as this beach volleyball, is we look at our other infrastructure that we have around us and try and use other car parks that are in the area. I see both of these proposals here have got car parking right next door to them. I feel that that's good design when we can actually utilise what we've already got, than looking at building other infrastructure just to house another event, another facility that we're trying to build. Use what we've got, and I think that we're in front.
All right, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. I think that's the last of our agenda items, isn't it? We'll go into general business. Yep. Is there any general business? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Chairman. I have one item of general business. I've been instructed by the tribunal to issue an apology in this forum for comments that I made on social media late last year. So I hereby sincerely apologise for those comments.
Thank you. Is there any further general business?
Yes, Mr.
Yeah. Councillor Taylor.
Mr Mayor, I just wanted to publicly acknowledge the young players that took the field for the Wide Bay Buccaneers in Bundaberg on the weekend wearing alternate socks. to speak out against depression. A number of footballers in the region have succumbed to suicide, and a young group of people aged between 13 and 16 took the field to speak up and to speak out for those who obviously need help. And their commitment as a group of young players is to speak out if they need help and to speak out if they feel as though others need help. This is a dangerous injury and illness that's affecting our whole community, and it's great to see young leaders of our community standing up, and I applaud them for that.
Is there any further general business? If not, I'll need a motion that we resolve to go into confidential. Need to get the reasons. I got it. We'll need a motion that we go into confidential to consider items 15.1 to 15.5 under section 275H and E. Moved by Councillor Everard, seconded by Councillor Hanson. Put the motion, all in favour. Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Oh, sorry, 15.1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. As per section 275H and E of the Act. We'll go to item 15.1 first, draft Fraser Coast rural residential strategy. This motion is moved by Councillor Chapman, seconded by Councillor Hanson. Are there any speakers? I'll put the motion, all in favour. Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. The next item is item 15.2, and Councillor Lewis is leaving the room. Expressions of interest, Fraser Coast Administration Centre, Harvey Bay CBD Precinct. This is moved by Councillor Everard, seconded by Councillor Truscott. Is there any discussion? Yeah. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Scott, would you be able to bring David back in? Yeah. Some people can read lips. Somebody can. You can read lips.
No, they've got to be out. They've got to be out. You look like Winks. Okay, I'll put the motion. Go to item 15.3, Saltwater Creek Road Position. This is moved by Councillor Chapman, seconded by Councillor Truscott. Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 15.4. Request for approval to acquire drainage easement at Parral, moved by Councillor Everard, seconded by Councillor Madden. No speakers. I'll put the motion, all in favour. Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 15.5, Avion Contracts of Sale, Harvey Bay Airport, moved Councillor Chapman, seconded by Councillor Everard. Were there any speakers? If not, I'll put the motion, all in favour. Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Can we just check there's nothing further I haven't got to on the agenda? I think that's it. There must be in terms of page of agenda per minute of meeting, that has to be a record. If there's nothing further, no, I'll close the meeting at 14 minutes past 11. 16 minutes past.